In 1968, two respected scientists positively identified a Sasquatch body as authentic before it was reportedly confiscated by authorities. This is the story of the Minnesota Iceman. In the realm of Bigfoot lore, few stories are as tantalizing and as controversial as that of the Minnesota Iceman. This frozen specimen, displayed in carnivals and fairs during the 1960s, has been described in exhaustive detail by those who saw it firsthand. The claims surrounding it go beyond simple conjecture. Two respected scientists identified it as a real biological entity. Eyewitness accounts, the sudden confiscation of the original body, and the subsequent replacement with a replica only deepen the intrigue. This video will provide an airtight case for the Minnesota Iceman being a real Sasquatch specimen, leaving no stone unturned. Every detail will be scrutinized to provide clarity and evidence for this extraordinary story. Section 1. Origin and Description. The Minnesota Iceman was first introduced to the public in 1968 by Frank Hansen, a carnival owner who claimed to have acquired the specimen from an anonymous, wealthy individual. Hansen's story regarding the origin of the creature evolved over time, adding to the mystery. Initially, he stated that the creature had been discovered in Siberia, frozen in ice, and transported to the United States by its original owner. In later interviews, Hansen claimed the Iceman was shot in a remote area of Southeast Asia during the Vietnam War, further complicating the narrative. Hansen's changing story seems like the typical ploy of a carnival exhibit owner, looking to drum up excitement and intrigue around his attraction. The fluidity of his narrative reflects a long-standing tradition among showmen to weave sensational tales, enticing the public to pay admission fees. This acknowledgement, however, does not diminish the compelling physical evidence and eyewitness testimony that suggests the Minnesota Iceman was far more than a fabricated attraction. The facts surrounding the case, the anatomical details, scientific observations, and subsequent actions taken to remove the original specimen make it extremely unlikely that the entire story was a hoax. Detailed description. The physical characteristics of the Iceman were striking and left an indelible impression on those who viewed it. Size and build. Measuring approximately 6 feet tall, the Iceman had a robust, muscular build. The chest and shoulders were broad, suggesting great physical strength, and the body appeared consistent with descriptions of Sasquatch given in eyewitness accounts across North America. Facial features. The face was described as a hybrid of human and ape, with a flat, broad nose, heavy brow ridges, and slightly protruding jaw. The mouth was wide, with thick lips, and the teeth were described as human-like, but larger and more uniform. The combination of features did not match any known primate species, lending credence to claims that the specimen was a previously unknown creature. Hair and skin. The body was covered in a thick layer of dark brown hair, though areas of bare skin were visible. The skin was described as leathery and grayish in tone, particularly in areas exposed to injury. Observers noted how the hair appeared matted and natural, not artificial, further supporting its authenticity. Injuries. One of the most notable features was the apparent trauma to the head and arm. The left eye appeared dislodged, and there was visible damage to the cranium. The left arm was broken, and some witnesses noted what appeared to be a bullet wound, consistent with Hansen's claim that the creature was shot. The injuries displayed a level of anatomical detail, such as fractured bone structure and torn tissue, that would have been extraordinarily difficult to replicate artificially, especially with the technology available in the 1960s. Hands and feet. The hands were large and human-like, with thick fingers and prominent nails. Observers remarked on the natural articulation of the fingers and the texture of the skin. The feet were enormous, with pronounced arches and distinct toes, providing further evidence of bipedal locomotion. Both scientists who examined the creature, and more on them shortly, commented on how the unique features of the hands and feet were consistent with reported Sasquatch footprints and sightings. Eyewitness testimonies. Many individuals who saw the original Iceman attested to its lifelike appearance. Attendees noted details that would have been impossible to replicate in a fake display of the 1960s, such as the subtle texture of the skin, the articulation of joints, and the chillingly real injuries on the creature's body. Several witnesses described being overwhelmed by the realism of the creature, with some even expressing unease at the thought of looking at a real corpse. Section 2. The Scientist's Examination and Identification. In December 1968, scientists Ivan T. Sanderson and Dr. Bernard Heuvelmans conducted an extensive examination of the Iceman. The scientists spent 3 full days observing the specimen, carefully documenting its features and compiling detailed reports. The sheer professionalism and academic rigor of their examination make it difficult to doubt their conclusions without substantive evidence to the contrary.
There was no doubt that we were looking at some sort of man. Not Homo sapiens, but some sort of strangely hairy man. We were struck by many things, the enormous hands and the enormous feet, and also, more especially, the features of the face, because it was absolutely unlike any man on earth.
Sanderson, a noted zoologist, described the creature as follows, quote, "Let me say simply that one look was actually enough to convince us that this was, from our point of view at least, the genuine article." Dr. Bernard Heuvelmans, the second scientist and zoologist to examine the creature, shared Sanderson's sentiment, stating in his 1969 paper that the Minnesota Iceman was a new species, which he named Homo pongoides. He described it as a unique hominid and suggested it could represent a primitive human ancestor, stating, quote, "It was tall and well-muscled, with at first glance the same proportions as you and I, but as hairy as a chimpanzee." He went on to say, quote, "I felt quite safely that I could discard the possibility of the creature being a fake. I had spent days and nights reviewing that possibility. It would have required construction of a mold made of rubber or wax, carefully colored to reproduce details we observed as fine as skin pores, together with wrinkles and folds corresponding to muscles and joints, veins just below the skin, and all the small defects likely to be found on a living creature: scratches, scars, moles, and pigmented spots. About 500,000 hairs would have to have been implanted at the correct angles, since the observed hair trends strictly corresponded to those seen in humans and anthropoid apes. Observations and analysis. Muscle and tissue details. The way light refracted through the ice revealed intricate muscle striations, vascular patterns, and subcutaneous tissue that could not have been replicated with materials available at the time. Sanderson emphasized that the details were, quote, "far beyond the capabilities of any sculptor or taxidermist." Odor and decay. Sanderson and Heuvelmans both noted a, quote, "sickly sweet smell consistent with decaying organic matter," which further supported the claim that the specimen was genuine. Heuvelmans stated, quote, "From the corner of the icy coffin nearest the left foot emanated the nauseating smell of a rotting corpse. The seals in that corner were obviously not airtight. Wounds and trauma." The injuries observed, including the dislodged eye and fractured arm, were consistent with a violent encounter. Heuvelmans speculated that the creature might have been shot at close range, stating, quote, "The bullet had gone through and destroyed the right eye, and the shock wave had blown the other eye out of its socket, and left a large crater at the back of the skull. Death must have been instantaneous."
It was obvious that this creature had been killed, because the one eye was completely missing, and the other was hanging out of the socket, and it had blood all around. So we thought it was probably shot in one eye, and the bullet made the other eye pop out.
Unique anatomical features. The hands and feet were meticulously documented. The proportions of the limbs, the curvature of the spine, and the placement of the foramen magnum indicated bipedal locomotion. Heuvelmans remarked, quote, "The structure of the feet, the hands, and even the articulation of the joints is consistent with primates, but distinctly unique, indicating a species previously unknown to science. This creature bridges the gap between known hominins and apes." Sanderson noted the creature had a, quote, "short upturned nose, prominent brow ridges, and enormous hands." Sanderson described the hands as having a, quote, "slender, tapered, and long thumb, with nails flat, yellow, and of an appearance that looked almost manicured." He also noted a, quote, "heel-like pad on the palm's outer side, suggesting habitual quadrupedal behavior, which aligns perfectly with the reported Sasquatch sightings across North America." Their reputations, the rigorous documentation, and the absence of credible refutations together form a strong argument against the idea that Sanderson and Heuvelmans lied or misrepresented their findings about the Minnesota Iceman. While Hansen's narrative inconsistencies cast a shadow of doubt on his credibility, the overwhelming physical evidence observed by Sanderson and Heuvelmans, coupled with the corroborating eyewitness accounts, point to the authenticity of the Iceman. The level of anatomical detail, combined with the natural appearance of its injuries, makes it nearly impossible to dismiss the creature as mere fabrication. This dichotomy between Hansen's sensationalism and the specimen's apparent authenticity only deepens the mystery and raises questions about the true origins of the Minnesota Iceman. Section 3. The Case Against Deception. Professional reputations. Both Ivan T. Sanderson and Dr. Bernard Heuvelmans were respected figures in their fields. Their academic credentials and professional achievements highlight their commitment to scientific integrity. Sanderson was a Scottish-born naturalist, zoologist, and science writer who held degrees from the University of Cambridge. He studied zoology and geology, and his field research took him to remote regions of Africa, the Caribbean, and Southeast Asia. Sanderson's expertise extended to cryptozoology, where his analytical approach to investigating unknown creatures garnered respect. He authored numerous books and articles on wildlife, including detailed observations of rare and elusive species. Sanderson also appeared on television and radio, where he was known for bringing scientific insights to a broader audience. Heuvelmans, often referred to as the father of cryptozoology, was a Belgian-French scientist with a doctorate in zoology from the Free University of Brussels. His doctoral research focused on mammalian anatomy and evolution. Heuvelmans was an accomplished academic, publishing extensively on zoological topics and earning recognition for his work on the classification of mammals. His landmark book, On the Track of Unknown Animals, is considered a foundational text in cryptozoology, blending rigorous scientific methods with open-minded exploration of unexplained phenomena. Heuvelmans' reputation as a meticulous researcher lent considerable weight to his observations of the Minnesota Iceman. Fabricating or exaggerating findings related to the Iceman would have jeopardized both men's careers, reputations, and legacies. Both had a history of credible scientific contributions, making their conclusions about the Iceman highly credible. Consistent observations. Despite conducting separate portions of the examination, Sanderson and Heuvelmans' observations were consistent with one another. Both documented details such as muscle striations, vascular patterns, and injuries that aligned with real biological specimens. Heuvelmans stated, quote, "With its rich pelt and arrangement of hair, it resembled the great anthropoid apes, particularly the gorilla and chimpanzee." These observations were corroborated by additional eyewitness accounts from attendees who viewed the Iceman before its disappearance. Detailed documentation. Sanderson and Heuvelmans produced extensive reports detailing their findings. These reports, which included sketches, notes, and comparisons with known primate anatomy, demonstrate a level of rigor that far exceeds what would be expected if their conclusions were fabricated. Their focus on anatomical specifics, such as the placement of the foramen magnum or the articulation of joints, provides a robust framework for their claims. Lack of contradictory evidence. Critics of Sanderson and Heuvelmans have failed to provide compelling evidence that disproves their observations. While skeptics have long argued that the Iceman was a hoax, none have been able to provide credible alternative explanations for the anatomical details documented by the scientists.
There is no question that the Iceman could be a hoax, a faked dummy, rubber dummy, or what have you, as they told in the press. When you have seen something, we examined this creature for 3 days, very carefully, and we were very suspicious, I can tell you, at the start. But after a while, that was quite ruled out.
Section 4. Confiscation and Replacement. Shortly after the findings of Sanderson and Heuvelmans were made public, the original Minnesota Iceman disappeared under mysterious circumstances. When it reappeared in Hansen's exhibit, it was clear to many that it had been replaced with a replica. This sudden switch raised questions about the fate of the original specimen and suggested possible government involvement. Hansen reported that government officials visited him shortly after the scientist's examination. According to Hansen, the officials examined the specimen and informed him that it needed to be removed from public view. Hansen claimed that they took the original body and left him with a hastily constructed replica. Speculation and theories. Some theorists believe the government confiscated the Iceman to prevent widespread panic or to study the specimen in secrecy. Others suggest that the removal was part of a broader effort to suppress evidence of Sasquatch and other cryptids, a theme consistent with reports from whistleblowers in law enforcement and wildlife agencies. Hansen later stated, quote, "I was told that what I had could cause a lot of trouble if people knew the truth. They took it and left me with a replica. I had no choice." Sanderson, upon seeing the replacement, said, quote, "The new Iceman was an obvious fake. The intricate details of the original were missing, and the replica lacked the lifelike features we documented during our examination." Section 5. Addressing skeptical claims. Critics of the Minnesota Iceman have argued that it was nothing more than a carnival hoax designed to attract paying customers. However, these claims fail to hold up under scrutiny. Arguments against skepticism. Scientific credibility. Both Sanderson and Heuvelmans were respected scientists, as we've already covered, with no financial incentive to fabricate their findings. Their reputations and detailed documentation lend significant credibility to their claims. Physical evidence. The anatomical details described by the scientists could not have been replicated using materials or techniques available in the 1960s. The lifelike appearance, complete with injuries and decaying tissue, would have required advanced knowledge far beyond what was accessible to a carnival operator at that time. Witness accounts. Numerous attendees who saw the original Iceman attested to its lifelike appearance, further supporting the argument that it was a genuine biological specimen. Section 6. Government cover-up of Sasquatch evidence. There are numerous accounts from law enforcement, park rangers, and military personnel who have encountered Sasquatch but were instructed to remain silent. These accounts provide context for the theory that the Minnesota Iceman's confiscation was part of a broader effort to suppress evidence of Sasquatch. Eyewitness testimonies. Retired U.S. Forest Ranger Bob Garrett stated, quote, "I've encountered large footprints in remote areas multiple times in my career. When I tried to report it, my superiors told me to stop wasting time on fairy tales." Former Washington State Trooper James Beck shared, quote, "I've seen what I believe to be Sasquatch crossing roads late at night. I filed a report once, but it was dismissed without investigation. They told me not to pursue it further." Retired Forest Service Ranger Charles E. Howard stated, quote, "We'd hear strange calls in the woods. Sightings now and then, but we weren't supposed to acknowledge it. Orders came down to keep quiet. People wouldn't be ready to hear it." David Politis, former law enforcement officer and current Bigfoot researcher, said, quote, "In all my years in law enforcement, I came across enough evidence to know Bigfoot was real. Yet I was told directly by superiors to leave it alone. Keep it quiet. These are things the public isn't supposed to know." Bill Lunsford, a retired park ranger, shared, quote, "Many of us had sightings or found tracks, but the official stance was silence. I got the message, like everyone else. Bigfoot sightings aren't to be shared." Veteran wildlife biologist Dr. John Bindernagel stated, quote, "The evidence for Sasquatch is there if you look, but there's an institutional resistance to acknowledging it. The idea challenges too many established narratives." The confiscation of the Minnesota Iceman fits perfectly in a pattern of reported government suppression. Many believe that authorities are actively working to hide Sasquatch evidence to avoid disrupting the status quo. Conclusion. The case for the Minnesota Iceman as a genuine Sasquatch specimen is compelling and well supported by scientific examination, eyewitness accounts, and corroborating evidence. From the meticulous observations of Sanderson and Heuvelmans to the suspicious confiscation of the original specimen, every piece of evidence points to the Iceman being far more than a carnival hoax. When coupled with corroborating accounts of government suppression, it becomes clear that the truth about Sasquatch is being deliberately concealed. This video aims to shine a light on the truth and encourage further investigation into this extraordinary case and others like it.
Well, there you have it, the fascinating and chilling account of the Minnesota Iceman and the disturbing implications that come with it. Bigfoot skeptics can no longer say that we don't have a verified body on record. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share it with your family and friends, and subscribe to Cabin in the Woods. And if you want to contribute to future projects and show me extra support, I'll leave a link to my Buy Me a Coffee page in the description below. Thanks for watching.